Chapter 1. The Evening Star. Vesper's first memory was of the great baobab tree that stood at the heart of her village. Even when the years of her childhood had long faded, she could still remember its towering height and wide branches, the feel of its rough bark under her palms as she climbed. Sometimes when she dreamed, she could still hear the rustle of wind blowing through its leaves. Throughout her travels far and wide, she had never seen another like it. Tall beyond measure, strong and unyielding, like her people. The earthy aroma of the forest always brought her back to her days clambering along the great tree's towering limbs and flowing branches, climbing so high that it seemed she could touch the sky if she just reached a little higher. And she had tried. She and the other children had always dared one another to greater heights, teasing and taunting as children do, but they were always stopped before things got too far out of hand. Her Aunt Magda was always there to keep them safe, seeming to be everywhere at once, shooing them back to the ground with a shake of her head and a knowing smile. "How did you get up so high? I didn't even see you climbing," Vesper asked one day after she had almost fallen, her breath catching in her throat when her aunt grabbed her arm just before she slipped off a branch that was bending too far. Her aunt's face split into a wide grin and she leaned over to whisper in Vesper's ear, "I'll show you when you're ready," she promised with a wink. Then before she could open her mouth to speak, Vesper found herself on the ground far below, gaping up at the titanic tree, not remembering how she had gotten there. At first it seemed perfectly normal. She imagined everyone could do such things, appearing and disappearing in the blink of an eye, but the looks of awe and wonder on the other children's faces told a different story. Vesper and her friends spent many afternoons draped over the old tree's roots and branches, trying to puzzle out how her aunt managed to be everywhere at once. How she could be at the top of the tree one moment, and on the ground the next. But no matter how hard they tried to understand it, nothing made sense. Vesper had even tried to trick her more than once, pretending to be hurt, while the other children kept her distracted. She had spent the better part of an hour dangling off a branch, doing her best to appear like she was in danger, but her aunt never came. Worse still, when she returned home at the end of the day, her aunt gave her a knowing look, almost laughing at her. Magda, her aunt, was larger than life to her, wise and knowing in all things. She was known far and wide in the province for making healing compounds and medicines for the sick, and while most of those who dealt in medicines sold little more than snake oil and false promises, her aunt was a true healer, an artist whose skills had saved more lives than she could count. From a young age, Vesper would spend her mornings running from one end of their village to the other, delivering her aunt's concoctions to the older folks in the village who couldn't get by without them. Her reputation was so great that sometimes Vesper delivered her aunt's concoctions to merchants who would deliver them to wealthy patrons in distant corners of the empire. Their community was a simple place, tucked away and forgotten in the northern corner of the Roman province of Africa Proconsularis, made up of freemen farmers, who spent their days under the hot sun growing golden wheat, and then came home to their small village at the end for safety and security. It was laid out in a circular pattern from the great tree, with most families living in small two-room cottages made from sod with thatched roofs, or in the case of a lucky few, like herself, a villa made of pale limestone covered by terracotta shingles. Her aunt's profession had the added benefit of surrounding their home with a marvelous garden that was the source of many of the plants she needed for her work. Vesper's father worked in Rome, and while he was absent for most of the year, his station, along with her aunt's medicines, did afford them a better life than the common farmer. "What was my mother like?" Vesper asked one evening. They often spent their time on a bench in the garden after supper, gazing up at the star-filled heavens while her aunt braided her hair. Magda's hands working diligently, deftly combing and twisting Vesper's hair so it lay flat against her skull in a complex series of braids, which kept her normally wild afro nice and neat. It was their favorite thing, to study the constellations and simply talk about their day, and they spent most of their evenings before bed doing so. Magda's hands froze and she let out a deep sigh before speaking. She was beautiful and strong, a fierce protector of our people, so much so that even today our enemies speak of her in fearful whispers. And she loved you so much, there was nothing she would not do for you. Until she got sick, Vesper asked, repeating the story she was often told. Magda always spoke of her mother this way, as a hero, a larger-than-life titan, who protected her people and family. But never more than that. She gave no other details about who the woman really was. Yes, until she got sick, Magda repeated, resuming her work with Vesper's hair. Yes, but what was she really like? She blurted out, pushing her aunt's arm away and standing up, half of her hair sticking up in a wild afro. I mean, you've told me over and over that she was a great hero of our people, that she protected us. But I want to know real things. Was she funny, or serious? What did she really look like? What was her favorite food, her favorite color? What has brought on all these questions, child? Said her aunt, finally looking at her, her brows coming together. Vesper shook her head. I run around the village every day. All the girls have their mothers. You know, to teach them how to be a woman, to just be with them. You have me, said her aunt, looking hurt, dropping the comb in her lap. Have I not done those things, taken care of you since you were hardly a babe? Including fixing that unruly mop you call hair. It's not the same, said Vesper, starting to pace. Sit, child, calm yourself. Please, said Magda, patting the bench beside her. I will tell you what I can while we finish with your braids. With a sigh, Vesper did what she was told, plopping back down on the bench and leaning up against her so that Magda could resume her work. When I said your mother was beautiful, I meant it. We were sisters, but no one would say that if they saw us together. She took the best from our parents. Our mother's high cheekbones and smooth, dark skin, and our father's height and strength and deep brown eyes that could see into a man's soul, and often they did. When we were children, all the boys in the village pursued her, but she had eyes only for your father. Mostly because he didn't fawn over her like the others, and he could make her laugh. Really, father is so serious now. Her aunt gave her a wide smile, shaking her head. He was much different back then. He was mischievous, a prankster, and he did everything he could to make her laugh. Her laugh was infectious. Vesper closed her eyes as her aunt spoke, leaning in closer, comforted by her warmth. And was she really a hero? Her aunt hesitated before continuing, her voice low and calm. Yes, our line has ever been protectors, tasked with keeping our people safe. She had a profound sense of justice, of right and wrong. It wasn't enough for her to stop the spread of evil. She wanted to change the hearts and minds of all people that she met, so that the world could be a better place. And did she? Asked Vesper, sighing deeply, her mind starting to drift, and her eyelids getting heavy. What? Make the world better, she asked, closing her eyes. For a time, whispered Magda with a tremble in her voice. For a time. Until she got sick. Right? Yes, she paid a terrible price for her efforts. We all did. Her aunt was silent for a long time, and Vesper came fully awake for a moment to find quiet tears rolling down her face, brightening Magda's eyes. She had never seen Magda cry and couldn't understand what could make her so sad. Her aunt had an iron will and often scoffed at the women in the village who showed emotion, calling them soft, weak. Not knowing what to do, Vesper wrapped her arms around the older woman's waist, burying her face into her side. "I'm sorry, Auntie. I didn't mean to make you sad. I won't ask anymore. I promise." "No, child, you must always seek the truth, ask questions even if the answers are unpleasant. We must feel all of our feelings or we will become monsters." "Yes, but enough, child. It's time to get some rest. Close your eyes and I will sing and watch over you." Vesper nodded, placing her head on her lap. Magda began in a low voice, hardly a whisper, singing an old song about Shango, a great Oz king who had been punished by God for his anger, forced to spend all eternity away from his family. Comforted by her aunt's warm embrace and soft rhythm, Vesper drifted off to sleep, dreaming of a woman with dark eyes and a warm smile like her aunt's, a woman she never knew, and would never know.